travel back to the medieval world to uncover the story of Richard the Lionheart, a king whose name echoes through the centuries. Known for his bravery and unmatched skill on the battlefield, Richard was a figure of both legend and reality, celebrated as a warrior and a leader. But who was the man behind the title? How did he earn the name Lionheart? And what challenges did he face during his reign? From the courts of Europe to the battlegrounds of the Holy Land, Richard's life was a tale of ambition, triumph, and sacrifice. Join me as we begin this incredible journey, exploring the life and legacy of a king who became a legend, early life shaping a warrior. King Richard of England, better known as Richard the Lionheart, was born on September 8th, 1157, at Beaumont Palace in Oxford. As the third son of Henry II, King of England, and Eleanor of Aquitaine, Richard was part of one of the most powerful and complex dynasties of the medieval period, the Angevin Empire. His early years were shaped by a family steeped in ambition, conflict, and cultural sophistication, all of which influenced the man who would grow to become a legendary warrior king. Richard's mother, Eleanor of Aquitaine, was one of the most remarkable women of the Middle Ages. A former Queen of France and heiress to the vast Duchy of Aquitaine, she was known for her intelligence, political acumen, and patronage of the arts. Eleanor's influence on Richard was profound, particularly in fostering his love for the chivalric ideals of the time. She introduced him to the culture of courtly love and the troubadour tradition, which celebrated themes of honor, bravery, and romance. Despite being the third son, Richard's path to kingship was shaped by the volatile dynamics within the Angevin family. Henry II's empire stretched from England to large parts of modern-day France, including Normandy, Anjou, and Aquitaine. However, this vast territory was also a source of constant tension. Rivalries among Richard and his brothers, Henry, the young king, Geoffrey of Brittany, and John, often erupted into open rebellion against their father. As a boy, Richard spent much of his time in Aquitaine, where he was groomed to rule as duke. By the age of 16, he had already displayed his military prowess, leading forces to suppress revolts in his mother's lands. His courage and skill on the battlefield earned him a reputation as a formidable warrior, setting the stage for his later exploits. Richard's upbringing also included a comprehensive education. He was well versed in Latin and reportedly fluent in French, the language of the court, and Occitan, spoken in Aquitaine. This multilingual ability helped him navigate the complex politics of his realm and maintain alliances across his territories. He was known for his sharp intellect, and although not particularly religious in his personal life, he understood the importance of faith in legitimizing his rule and uniting his subjects. Tensions within the Angevin dynasty came to a head in 1173 when Richard, alongside his brothers Henry and Geoffrey, rebelled against their father. This revolt, known as the Great Revolt, was a response to their dissatisfaction with Henry II's attempts to retain centralized control over his territories. Although the rebellion ultimately failed, it showcased Richard's emerging leadership qualities and his willingness to challenge authority, even that of his own father. The rebellion also marked the beginning of Richard's enduring rivalry with his youngest brother, John. Henry II favored John as his preferred heir to parts of the Angevin Empire, leading to jealousy and animosity between the siblings. This tension would define much of Richard's life and continue to shape the Plantagenet dynasty after his death. By the 1180s, Richard had solidified his reputation as a capable and ambitious leader. His efforts to secure Aquitaine and his military campaigns against rebellious barons demonstrated his tactical brilliance and unwavering determination. These experiences would prepare him for the larger stage of the Third Crusade, where he would achieve the fame that earned him the title of Lionheart. Richard's early life was a tapestry of contrasts. The refinement of Eleanor's court juxtaposed with the brutal realities of feudal warfare, the loyalty to family ideals countered by the betrayals that fractured the Angevin dynasty. These experiences shaped his character, instilling in him the qualities of courage, resilience, and ambition that would define his reign. As we move forward, we'll see how Richard's early experiences prepared him for the challenges of kingship and the extraordinary campaigns that would cement his place in history. The Angevin Empire, Richard's place in a turbulent dynasty. Richard the Lionheart's early years unfolded within the vast and complex Angevin Empire, a realm that stretched from Scotland to the Pyrenees. His family, the Plantagenets, ruled over this sprawling territory with ambition and cunning, but their reign was plagued by internal strife and power struggles. The dynamics of this empire shaped Richard's worldview, leadership style, and the path that ultimately led him to the throne. The Angevin Empire was established by Richard's father, Henry II, one of medieval Europe's most powerful monarchs. Henry's marriage to Eleanor of Aquitaine, one of the wealthiest and most influential women of her time, brought vast territories in southern France under Plantagenet control. Together, Henry and Eleanor ruled over England, Normandy, Anjou, Maine, Aquitaine, Gascony, and Brittany. This empire was not a single, unified state, but a collection of semi-independent territories, each with its own customs and loyalties. Managing this patchwork of lands required constant negotiation, diplomacy, and military force. Richard's position within the family hierarchy was shaped by the ambitions and rivalries of his parents and siblings. As a third son, Richard was not initially expected to inherit the throne of England. Instead, his father envisioned him as the ruler of Aquitaine, a culturally and economically rich duchy with deep ties to Eleanor's lineage. However, the constant power struggles within the family soon drew Richard into a larger web of conflict. Henry II's eldest son, Henry the Young King, was crowned as co-king in 1170, but was given little real authority. Frustrated by his lack of power, he led a rebellion against his father in 1173, joined by his brothers Richard and Geoffrey. Although this great revolt ultimately failed, it exposed the deep divisions within the Plantagenet family. The rebellion was fueled by grievances over land, titles, and their father's iron grip on power. For Richard, this was a formative experience, teaching him the importance of loyalty, strategy, and the harsh realities of political betrayal. After the rebellion, Richard reconciled with his father, but focused his efforts on Aquitaine. As Duke, he faced constant challenges from rebellious barons who sought to assert their independence. Richard's military campaigns in Aquitaine were brutal and efficient, earning him a reputation as a fierce and uncompromising leader. His ability to crush dissent and maintain control over the duchy demonstrated his tactical brilliance and determination, qualities that would later define his reign as king. The family's internal conflicts deepened with the deaths of Henry the young king in 1183 and Geoffrey of Brittany in 1186. These losses brought Richard closer to the throne of England, but they also intensified his rivalry with his youngest brother, John. Henry II favored John as his heir to parts of the Angevin Empire, a decision that angered Richard and led to further tensions. The situation came to a head in 1189, when Richard, with the support of King Philip II of France, rebelled against his father. This final rebellion proved decisive. Henry II, weakened by illness and betrayal, was forced to negotiate with Richard, and Philip, July 1189, Henry abdicated, naming Richard as his successor. Shortly afterward, Henry died, leaving Richard to inherit the Angevin Empire. Richard's rise to power marked the end of one era and the beginning of another, as his reign would be defined by his relentless pursuit of glory on the battlefield and his leadership during the Third Crusade. The Angevin Empire that Richard inherited was vast but fragile. Its territories were bound together more by the strength of the Plantagenet dynasty than by any shared identity or governance. Richard faced the dual challenge of securing his realm while pursuing his ambitions abroad. His upbringing in this volatile environment had prepared him for the task, instilling in him the qualities of resilience, strategy, and a deep understanding of power. Richard's place within the Angevin Empire was marked by conflict, ambition, and an unyielding drive for greatness. His role as a son, duke, and eventually king was shaped by the tumultuous politics of his family and the challenges of ruling over such a vast and diverse realm. As we delve deeper into his story, we will see how these early experiences influenced his actions as king and his legendary role in the Third Crusade. The Third Crusade, answering the call of Christendom in 87, news of the fall of Jerusalem to Saladin sent shockwaves through Christendom. The capture of the Holy City by Muslim forces following the devastating Battle of Hattin was a rallying cry for Christian Europe to mount a response. This urgent need to reclaim Jerusalem became the driving force behind the Third Crusade, and Richard the Lionheart, newly crowned King of England, quickly emerged as one of its most formidable leaders. Richard's decision to join the crusade was influenced by both personal ambition and genuine religious fervor. As a deeply pious man, he saw the crusade as a sacred duty to defend Christianity and reclaim the holy sites. Yet, it was also an opportunity to solidify his reputation as a warrior king, demonstrating his prowess on the grand stage of Christendom. From the beginning of his reign in 1189, Richard devoted himself entirely to preparing for the campaign, selling royal lands, imposing heavy taxes, and even negotiating alliances to fund the massive undertaking. The Third Crusade was launched under the papal banner with Richard joining forces with two of Europe's most powerful monarchs, Philip II of France and Frederick Barbarossa, the Holy Roman Emperor. This coalition of leaders represent a rare moment of unity among rival kingdoms, bound together by the shared goal of reclaiming the Holy Land. However, the alliance was fragile, as each ruler pursued their own interests alongside the larger mission. Richard departed from England in 1190, leaving the governance of his realm to trusted officials, including William Longchamp, while focusing all his energy on the Crusade. His journey began with a voyage to Sicily, where he joined Philip to wait out the winter. While in Sicily, Richard's strong personality and decisive actions became apparent. He secured the release of his sister Joan, who had been held hostage, and asserted his authority in diplomatic disputes with local rulers, earning both admiration and resentment. In 1191, Richard and his forces sailed to Cyprus, where he further demonstrated his military acumen. After the island's ruler, Isaac Comnenos, refused to support the crusade, Richard launched a swift and effective campaign, capturing Cyprus within weeks. This conquest not only secured a vital supply base for the crusade, but also added to Richard's growing reputation as an unstoppable force. He subsequently sold Cyprus to the Knights Templar, using the proceeds to fund the next phase of the campaign. By June 1191, Richard arrived in the Holy Land, where he joined the ongoing siege of Acre. Acre was a critical port city and the key to controlling the region. The siege had already been underway for 2 years, with Christian forces struggling to overcome the well-defended Muslim garrison. Richard's arrival reinvigorated the Crusader army. His tactical expertise and determination turned the tide of the siege, leading to the city's surrender in July 1191. The victory at Acre was a major milestone for the Crusaders, solidifying Richard's reputation as a brilliant military leader. Despite their shared successes, tensions between Richard and Philip II of France began to escalate. Their rivalry, rooted in long-standing disputes over territories in France, undermined the cohesion of the Crusader forces. Philip's decision to return to France shortly after the capture of Acre left Richard as the de facto leader of the crusade. While this allowed him to command the campaign with greater authority, it also placed the burden of leadership squarely on his shoulders. Richard's focus now turned to recapturing Jerusalem. However, his progress was hindered by logistical challenges, internal divisions among the Crusader forces, and the formidable opposition led by Saladin, the Muslim leader, known for his strategic brilliance and chivalry, posed a significant challenge to Richard's ambitions. Their rivalry would define the remainder of the Third Crusade, with both leaders engaging in a series of battles and negotiations that showcased their mutual respect and tactical ingenuity. The Third Crusade, under Richard's leadership, became a test of endurance, diplomacy, and faith. It highlighted Richard's qualities as a warrior and a king, but it also exposed the limits of his power and the complexities of medieval warfare. While Jerusalem remained elusive, the campaign would achieve significant victories that solidified Richard's place in history as one of the greatest Crusader kings. The Siege of Acre, a defining victory. The Siege of Acre, lasting from 1189 to 1191, was one of the pivotal moments of the Third Crusade, showcasing both the determination of the Crusaders and the skill of their Muslim adversaries. When Richard the Lionheart arrived in June 1191, the city had already been under siege for 2 years, with Christian forces struggling to overcome its formidable defenses. Richard's arrival would turn the tide, culminating in a hard-fought victory that solidified his reputation as one of the greatest military leaders of the medieval period. Acre was a critical stronghold in the Holy Land. As a port city, it provided vital access to supplies and reinforcements, making it an indispensable asset for controlling the region. The siege had begun in 1189, led by Guy of Lusignan, the King of Jerusalem, and supported by other Crusader forces. Despite initial successes, the Christian army was unable to breach the city's defenses, and Saladin's forces kept them under constant pressure with counterattacks. The prolonged siege had taken a toll, leaving both sides exhausted and battered by disease, hunger, and attrition. Richard's arrival at Acre reinvigorated the crusading army. Accompanied by his well-equipped and highly disciplined troops, Richard brought not only military strength, but also strategic expertise. His leadership provided the unity and focus that the fragmented Christian forces desperately needed. Shortly after landing, Richard fell ill, likely from dysentery or scurvy, but even while bedridden, he directed operations and inspired his men. His resilience in the face of adversity earned him the loyalty and admiration of his troops. Richard's first priority was to strengthen the Crusaders' position around Acre. He implemented rigorous discipline among the ranks, ensuring that the army operated as a cohesive force. Under his direction, the Crusaders constructed powerful siege engines, including trebuchets and battering rams, to break through the city's walls. These machines, combined with relentless assaults, began to weaken Acre's defenses, placing the garrison under immense pressure. The turning point came in July 1191, when Acre's defenders, realizing their position was untenable, began negotiations for surrender. On July 12th, the city capitulated to the Crusaders under terms that required the garrison to pay a large ransom, release Christian prisoners, and surrender a holy relic believed to be the true cross. Saladin, still commanding forces nearby, agreed to the terms but delayed fulfilling them, likely to buy time to regroup. The fall of Acre was a significant triumph for the Crusaders, but the aftermath was marked by controversy. When Saladin failed to meet the terms of the surrender, Richard, frustrated by the delays and concerned about maintaining discipline, made a fateful decision. On August 20th, he ordered the execution of approximately 2,700 Muslim prisoners, including soldiers and civilians. This act, though seen by some as a necessary demonstration of strength, tarnished Richard's image for others, highlighting the brutal realities of medieval warfare. Acre's capture had far-reaching consequences. For the Crusaders, it provided a critical foothold in the Holy Land, ensuring a steady flow of supplies and reinforcements. The victory also bolstered morale and strengthened Richard's position as the leader of the crusading forces. However, the brutality of the siege and its aftermath deepened the animosity between Christians and Muslims, fueling the cycles of vengeance that characterized the Crusades. The siege also marked a turning point in Richard's relationship with Philip II of France. While the two had cooperated during the siege, their long-standing rivalry over territories in France resurfaced. Shortly after Acre's capture, Philip announced his decision to return to France, leaving Richard as the sole leader of the crusade. This departure placed a greater burden on Richard, but also allowed him to direct the campaign without interference. The Siege of Acre showcased Richard's qualities as a military commander, his ability to inspire loyalty, adapt to challenging circumstances, and execute complex strategies. It also underscored the broader challenges of the crusade, from the internal divisions among the Christian forces to the relentless opposition from Saladin. The victory at Acre was a defining moment in Richard's career, setting the stage for the battles and negotiations that would follow as the Crusaders continued their march toward Jerusalem. Rivalry and diplomacy. Richard and Saladin. The rivalry between Richard the Lionheart and Saladin during the Third Crusade is one of the most storied conflicts in medieval history. These two legendary figures represented opposing sides in a struggle for control of the Holy Land, yet their mutual respect and moments of diplomacy set their rivalry apart from the often brutal dynamics of the Crusades. Richard's military brilliance and Saladin's strategic acumen created a chessboard of battles, negotiations, and truces that defined the latter years of the Crusade. By 1191, the Third Crusade had reached a critical phase. Richard's forces, reinvigorated after their victory at Acre, began their march toward Jerusalem. Saladin, aware of Richard's prowess and the strength of the Crusader army, employed tactics of attrition and delay. He avoided direct confrontations whenever possible, focusing instead on harassing the Crusaders with cavalry raids and cutting off their supply lines. This strategy aimed to weaken the Crusaders before they could reach their ultimate goal, the Holy City. Richard's leadership was on full display during this campaign. He carefully organized the Crusader army into disciplined columns, with cavalry and infantry protecting supply wagons from Saladin's attacks. His attention to detail and ability to maintain morale under constant pressure allowed the Crusaders to push forward despite the hardships. Along the way, Richard captured several key fortresses, including Jaffa and Ascalon, strengthening his hold on the region. One of the most notable battles of the Crusade occurred at Arsuf in September 1191. Saladin, seeking to halt the Crusaders' advance, launched a massive assault on Richard's army as it marched along the coast. The battle tested Richard's tactical skill as he managed to maintain the cohesion of his forces despite Saladin's repeated charges. At the right moment, Richard ordered a counterattack, routing Saladin's forces and securing a decisive victory. The Battle of Arsuf bolstered the Crusaders' morale and demonstrated that Richard was a commander to be reckoned with. Despite their rivalry, Richard and Saladin shared a degree of mutual respect that shaped their interactions. Both leaders recognized the futility of prolonged conflict and the value of negotiation. Richard, while determined to recapture Jerusalem, understood the logistical and strategic challenges of holding the city against Saladin's forces. Similarly, Saladin, though committed to defending Muslim control of the Holy Land, was willing to explore diplomatic solutions to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. The two leaders never met in person, but their negotiations were conducted through intermediaries. Richard proposed several truces and agreements, including a plan for a marriage alliance between his sister Joan and one of Saladin's brothers, which would have symbolized a union of Christian and Muslim interests. While these proposals ultimately fell through, they reflected Richard's pragmatic approach to diplomacy and his willingness to seek compromise. One of the key issues in their negotiations was access to Jerusalem. For Richard, reclaiming the Holy City was the central goal of the crusade, but he faced significant obstacles. The Crusader army, though formidable, was not strong enough to lay siege to Jerusalem without leaving its supply lines vulnerable. Saladin, for his part, was determined to defend the city, but recognized the strain that prolonged conflict placed on his resources. The impasse led to the eventual signing of the Treaty of Jaffa in September 1192. The agreement allowed Christians to retain control of the coastal cities they had captured, such as Acre and Jaffa, while Muslims retained control of Jerusalem. However, the treaty also guaranteed safe passage for Christian pilgrims to the Holy City, ensuring that it remained accessible to those seeking to fulfill their religious duties. The Treaty of Jaffa marked the end of the Third Crusade, leaving Jerusalem in Muslim hands but ensuring a fragile peace in the region. Richard's decision to abandon the attempt to capture Jerusalem was pragmatic, reflecting his understanding of the limitations of his forces and the complexities of the conflict. For Saladin, the treaty preserved his hold on the Holy City while preventing further devastation. The rivalry between Richard and Saladin remains one of the most fascinating aspects of the Crusades. Their respect for each other's abilities and their shared moments of diplomacy stand in contrast to the brutality that often characterized the era. Richard's charisma and military skill, combined with Saladin's leadership and strategic brilliance, created a narrative of two larger-than-life figures whose conflict transcended simple notions of good and evil. The return to England, captivity, and ransom. After nearly 3 years of leading the Third Crusade, Richard the Lionheart began his journey back to England in late 1192. Although he had secured significant victories and established a fragile peace with Saladin through the Treaty of Jaffa, Jerusalem remained in Muslim hands. Despite this, Richard's reputation as a fearless and capable leader had been cemented. However, the voyage home proved perilous and would result in one of the most dramatic episodes of his life, his capture and ransom. Richard's return was fraught with challenges from the start. His rivalry with Philip II of France, who had left the crusade early, and the treachery of his brother John, who sought to undermine his authority in England, made it dangerous for him to travel openly. Knowing he would face hostility in both France and England, Richard chose to travel incognito, disguising himself as a humble pilgrim to avoid detection. This clandestine journey took him through Europe, but his efforts to remain hidden ultimately failed. In December 1192, while traveling through the territory of Duke Leopold V of Austria, Richard was recognized and arrested. His capture was partly due to a personal grudge held by Leopold, whose banner Richard had removed from the walls of Acre during the crusade, an insult that Leopold had not forgotten. Richard's imprisonment was a political windfall for his enemies. Leopold handed handed him over to Holy Roman Emperor Henry VI, who saw an opportunity to extract an enormous ransom while also asserting his influence over European politics. Richard was held in various locations across the empire, including the Castle of Trifles, where he was kept under strict guard. His captivity became a matter of international intrigue, with various factions attempting to either secure his release or exploit his absence. The ransom demanded for Richard's release was astronomical, 150,000 marks, equivalent to several years' worth of revenue for the English crown. This sum underscored Richard's value not only as a monarch, but also as a symbol of crusading prestige. To raise the money, the English government imposed heavy taxes on its people, including a levy known as the Saladin tithe. Churches contributed their treasures, and the general populace made significant sacrifices to secure their king's freedom. Meanwhile, Richard's enemies worked to prolong his captivity. Philip II of France and John conspired to undermine Richard's position, with John even offering bribes to Henry VI to keep Richard imprisoned. Philip reportedly wrote to Henry with a chilling warning, "Be careful, for the devil is loose." These machinations added to the already tense political climate in England, where John sought to position himself as a potential ruler in Richard's absence. Despite the challenges, Richard's supporters worked tirelessly to secure his release. Queen Eleanor of Aquitaine, Richard's formidable mother, played a central role in organizing the ransom effort. Her influence and determination ensured that the required funds were raised, demonstrating her unwavering loyalty and political acumen. Eleanor personally traveled to Germany to negotiate her son's release, showcasing her enduring power as one of medieval Europe's most influential figures. In February 1194, after more than a year in captivity, Richard was finally released. The payment of the ransom strained England's economy, but was seen as a necessary sacrifice to restore stability and protect the kingdom from further turmoil. Richard's return to England was met with widespread relief and celebration, though the heavy burden of the ransom left a lasting impact on his subjects. Richard's time in captivity had profound consequences for his reign. While he remained a heroic figure, his absence had exposed vulnerabilities in the Angevin Empire. John's attempts to usurp power had created divisions, and Philip's opportunistic actions in France threatened the stability of Richard's continental holdings. These challenges would dominate the remainder of Richard's reign, as he sought to reclaim lost territories and reassert his authority. Despite these difficulties, Richard's release reaffirmed his status as a legendary leader. His resilience and determination during captivity added to his mythos, solidifying his reputation as a king who faced adversity with courage. The story of his capture and ransom became part of the broader narrative of his life, illustrating both the grandeur and the hardships of kingship in the medieval world. The ransom of Richard the Lionheart remains one of the most famous episodes of the Middle Ages, a tale of loyalty, intrigue, and the immense cost of leadership. It revealed the fragility of power, the complexities of medieval politics, and the lengths to which a kingdom would go to secure its king. At the return to England, captivity and ransom. After nearly 3 years of leading the Third Crusade, Richard the Lionheart set out for England in late 1192. Though he had secured significant victories, Treaty of Jaffa, which ensured safe pilgrimage to Jerusalem, the holy city itself, remained in Muslim hands. Richard's departure marked the end of his crusading efforts, but not the end of his struggles. His journey home became one of the most perilous episodes of his life, marked by betrayal, captivity, and an extraordinary ransom. Richard's return was fraught with political risks. King Philip II of France, who had abandoned the crusade early, sought to undermine Richard's power, while his younger brother John conspired to seize control of England. To avoid detection, Richard traveled in disguise, taking an indirect route through Europe. However, his efforts to remain hidden failed when he was recognized near Vienna and captured by Duke Leopold V of Austria in December 1192. Leopold had personal reasons for arresting Richard. During the siege of Acre, Richard had publicly insulted Leopold by tearing down his banner from the city walls, claiming supremacy among the Crusader leaders. This humiliation lingered, and Richard's vulnerable position gave Leopold an opportunity for revenge. Leopold handed Richard over to Holy Roman Emperor Henry II, who saw the English king as a valuable prize. Richard's imprisonment became a political sensation across Europe. Henry VI demanded an enormous ransom, 150,000 marks, equivalent to several years' revenue for the English crown. This staggering sum demonstrated Richard's importance not only as a monarch, but also as a symbol of crusading glory. To raise the funds, the English government imposed heavy taxes, sold royal lands, and solicited contributions from the church. Even ordinary citizens were called upon to sacrifice, highlighting the extraordinary lengths to which the kingdom went to secure Richard's release. While Richard languished in captivity, his enemies worked to prolong his absence. Philip II and John conspired to undermine Richard's rule, with John offering bribes to Henry VI to keep his brother imprisoned. Philip infamously wrote to Henry, warning him to be careful, for the devil is loose, a reflection of his fear of Richard's return. Back in England, John's actions stirred unrest, and his ambition to seize the throne created divisions within the realm. Richard's mother, Eleanor of Aquitaine, emerged as a key figure in securing his release. A tireless advocate for her son, she organized efforts to gather the ransom, rallying the support of the nobility and the church. Her determination and political skill ensured that the required sum was eventually raised, despite the enormous burden it placed on the kingdom. Eleanor personally traveled to Germany to negotiate with Henry VI, emphasizing her enduring influence and loyalty to Richard. After 14 months in captivity, Richard was released in February 1194, following the payment of the ransom. The event was met with great relief and celebration in England, though the economic strain of the ransom left a lasting impact on the kingdom. Richard's return marked the restoration of stability, but his absence had revealed vulnerabilities within the Angevin Empire. The actions of John and Philip during his captivity had weakened Richard's position, setting the stage for conflicts that would dominate the remainder of his reign. Richard's imprisonment became a defining chapter in his life, illustrating the precariousness of power in the medieval world. While his reputation as a warrior king remained unblemished, His capture exposed the limits of his authority and the fragility of his empire. The extraordinary effort to secure his release highlighted the loyalty he inspired, but also the costs of his ambitions. The story of Richard's captivity and ransom is one of resilience and sacrifice, a testament to the challenges of medieval kingship. It underscores the interplay of loyalty, betrayal, and the immense value placed on a single ruler's freedom. For Richard, this ordeal was not the end of his challenges, but a prelude to his final years as a warrior king, striving to secure his legacy. The reign of a warrior king, governing from afar. Richard the Lionheart's reign as King of England was as unconventional as it was legendary. Of his 10 years as king, Richard spent only 6 months in England, devoting the majority of his time to crusades, diplomacy, and military campaigns on the continent. Despite his prolonged absences, Richard's reign left a lasting impact on England and the Angevin Empire, highlighting his priorities as a warrior king and his challenges as a ruler governing from afar. When Richard returned to England in 1194, he was greeted with relief and celebration, but the kingdom he had left behind was in turmoil. His brother John, with support from King Philip II of France, had conspired to seize power during Richard's captivity. Though John quickly sought forgiveness upon Richard's return, the betrayal exposed the fragile unity of the Angevin dynasty. To re-establish his authority, Richard moved swiftly, pardoning John while ensuring his own dominance over the throne. Richard's stay in England was brief. By the summer of 1194, he had departed for Normandy, prioritizing the defense and recovery of his continental territories. The Angevin Empire, stretching across vast swaths of modern-day France, was under constant threat from Philip II, who sought to exploit Richard's absence during the Crusade. Normandy, Aquitaine, and Anjou were particularly vulnerable, as Philip's forces pressed into these regions with increasing aggression. Richard launched a relentless campaign to reclaim and secure his lands, demonstrating the same tactical brilliance that had earned him fame during the Crusades. One of his most notable achievements was the construction of Chateau Gaillard, a formidable fortress overlooking the Seine River. Built with remarkable speed and ingenuity, the castle served as both a military stronghold and a symbol of Richard's determination to defend his empire. Richard reportedly declared it 1 year's work, but worth a king's ransom, reflecting its strategic and symbolic importance. While Richard focused on continental matters, England's governance was entrusted to trusted officials, including Hubert Walter, the Archbishop of Canterbury. Walter, serving as justiciar, implemented reforms to stabilize the kingdom, ensuring the collection of taxes and the administration of justice. Richard's reliance on capable administrators allowed him to maintain control over England despite his physical absence, though the heavy taxation required to fund his campaigns often bred resentment among his subjects. The financial demands of Richard's military endeavors were immense. The ransom for his release from captivity had drained the royal treasury, and his ongoing campaigns required additional resources. To meet these needs, Richard imposed heavy taxes, including levies on England's wealthiest individuals and the Suye Church. While these measures sustained his campaigns, they also strained relations with his subjects, creating tensions that would echo throughout his reign. Richard's rivalry with Philip II of France dominated the latter years of his life. The two monarchs engaged in a series of skirmishes, sieges, and diplomatic maneuvers, each seeking to assert dominance over their shared territories. Richard's military acumen often gave him the upper hand, as he reclaimed lost lands and fortified his holdings. However, the struggle was costly and exhausting, consuming the resources of both kingdoms. Despite his focus on warfare, Richard's reign was also marked by moments of diplomacy. He sought alliances with regional powers, including the Holy Roman Empire, to counterbalance Philip's ambitions. These efforts highlighted Richard's ability to navigate the complex web of medieval politics, even as his relentless campaigns defined his reign. In 1199, Richard's life came to an abrupt and tragic end. While besieging a minor castle at Chalus in Aquitaine, he was struck by a crossbow bolt. The wound became infected, and Richard died on April 6, 1199, at the age of 41. His death marked the end of an era for the Angevin Empire and left his territories in a precarious state, with his brother John inheriting the throne. Richard's reign was a testament to the duality of medieval kingship, a leader celebrated for his courage and military prowess, but criticized for his neglect of domestic affairs. His focus on crusades and continental ambitions reflected his priorities as a warrior king, yet it came at the expense of England's stability and prosperity. Despite these complexities, Richard's legacy endured. His reputation as the epitome of chivalry and martial skill has been immortalized in literature, art, and legend. He remains a symbol of courage and determination, a king whose actions resonated far beyond his lifetime. The enduring legend of a crusader, King Richard. The Lionheart's life was a tapestry of war, ambition, and legacy, woven with threads of heroism and complexity. As one of the most celebrated figures of the medieval era, his story transcends time, leaving an enduring imprint on history and popular culture. From the battlefields of the Holy Land to the courts of Europe, Richard's name evokes images of chivalry, courage, and the relentless pursuit of glory. Richard's epithet, Lionheart, perfectly encapsulates his essence. He was a king who lived for the thrill of battle, driven by a sense of duty to his faith and a hunger for personal achievement. The Third Crusade, though failing to achieve its ultimate goal of reclaiming Jerusalem, cemented his reputation as one of the greatest military leaders of his age. His tactical brilliance, evident in victories like the Battle of Arsuf and the Siege of Acre, ensured his place in the annals of history. Yet Richard was more than just a warrior. His role as a ruler reveals a man of contradictions. While he was revered for his bravery, his prolonged absences from England raised questions about his priorities as a king. The heavy taxation imposed to fund his campaigns and his ransom burdened his subjects, creating resentment that tempered his otherwise heroic image. These tensions highlight the dual nature of his legacy, a ruler who inspired loyalty and sacrifice, but at significant cost. The Angevin Empire, over which Richard presided, was both a testament to his family's power and a source of constant strife. His relentless campaigns against Philip II of France showcased his determination to defend and expand his realm, but his untimely death left the empire vulnerable. The loss of key territories under his brother John marked the decline of the Angevin dynasty's dominance, underscoring the fragility of Richard's achievements. Despite these challenges, Richard's legend has endured. Medieval chroniclers painted him as a larger-than-life figure, a paragon of chivalry and martial prowess. His rivalry with Saladin, characterized by mutual respect and moments of diplomacy, added a layer of complexity to his story, elevating it to a narrative of epic proportions. These accounts formed the foundation of a mythos that has only grown over time, fueled by literature, art, and film. In the centuries following his death, Richard became a symbol of idealized kingship. His portrayal in Robin Hood tales as the rightful king returning to restore justice contrasted sharply with the scheming Prince John, reinforcing his status as a hero of the people. These stories, though rooted in legend, reflect the deep cultural resonance of Richard's legacy, illustrating how his image evolved to meet the needs of different eras. Modern historians, however, have sought to balance the romanticized view of Richard with a more nuanced understanding of his reign. They have explored his pragmatism, his occasional ruthlessness, and the complexities of his relationships with allies and adversaries. This scholarship reveals a ruler who was as much a product of his time as he was a shaper of it, navigating the turbulent landscape of medieval politics and warfare with skill and determination. Richard the Lionheart's life is a reminder of the power of myth and memory. His story, a blend of triumph and tragedy, reflects the aspirations and struggles of an era defined by faith, conflict, and ambition. Whether seen as a heroic crusader or a flawed monarch, Richard's legacy continues to inspire and intrigue, offering a window into the medieval world and the enduring allure of the warrior king. As we conclude our journey through the life of Richard the Lionheart, we are left with a figure who defies simple categorization, a king whose courage and charisma ensured his immortality, and whose complexities remind us of the human realities behind the legends of history.